Today we're interviewing Tom Hullena. Tom's election slogan is common sense, commitment and integrity, a better Masterton for all. Tom is standing as a candidate in the general ward. Welcome Tom, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lyn, and thanks for creating this option for all us candidates.
Pleasure. Look, what motivated you to stand and what do you bring to the role?
Yeah, good question. I guess on reflection, my last 35 to 40 years or so has been, my working career anyway, has been in the service of others. And I've come to the realisation that that's what energises me, that's what gives me the greatest satisfaction, the greatest fulfilment. And so most of that's been in education, and I know council's not an education space, but to me council is a space where we are serving the community, we are serving the people of Masterton in this case, and so it's an opportunity for me to continue that work. So yeah, I guess that to fulfil a passion to serve others, and then secondly, I believe I have experiences, I have the character, and I have the skill set to make a positive contribution to council. Yeah, so mostly those are the two reasons, really. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's talk about rates. Do you know what the median wage is for people of Masterton?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the median wage is, but I did some research, and the median household income, disposable income, is 90,000 from what I gathered. Now that's not individual income, that's household income, so there could be 2 or 3 earners in that. And that's about $27,000 a year or per annum lower than the national average. And then I looked at some other research which said that 75% of Masterton people earn $50,000 or less per annum. So it's clear that Masterton incomes are quite below the national average, and if we're talking about rates, anybody on council needs to take that into consideration. The impact on rates on a disposable income that's below the national average.
Yeah, our understanding is the median wage here is 70% lower than the national median wage. So we're just trying to get a feel for, especially current councillors that we interview, that they understand how low wages are here.
70% lower or 70%?
Sorry, 70% of the national median.
Yeah.
So it is quite a low income,
30%
really.
down. Yeah.
And so in the long-term plan, it's been set down as a 6.8% rates increase over the next 10 years, and it's a lot of money for people to have to deal with and find, because really there's no disposable income here. So if you got onto council, what strategies would you employ or support to manage or reduce those rates?
Yeah, I think rates affordability is a big question, and it's a big challenge. I often balk myself when I look at my rates bill, and probably over the last 3 terms of local government elections, many people have campaigned on the fact that they'll reduce rates, and I haven't seen that over the last 3 terms. So that obviously is a challenging thing to do. I think you can slow down rates increases. Coming back to your point, 6.8%. Inflation's currently running at 7.3% or 7.5%, so 6.8 is probably not a bad deal for the people of Masterton, because we've got to realise that council's costs are going up in terms of whatever they're delivering, and it's probably going up at about the rate of inflation. So I think any time rates go up less than the cost of inflation, ratepayers probably got a good deal. Having said that, what's affordable for one person and what's affordable for another, how do you determine that? So that's another part of the challenge. Also, I think there's huge expectation now on councils to be everything to everybody, and there's an expectation that council services infrastructure will be perfect. The number of services being offered will increase, and then on the other hand, you've got an expectation that rates need to be kept low. Now those things don't go hand in hand; they pull against each other. If you want to if you want to up the services and the quality of the services, everything else being equal, you've got to up the rates, and vice versa. So yeah, I fully accept that rates are making rates affordable. Is a significant challenge. In my mind at this point in time, and again, I haven't fully researched it, but I think there's three strategies that we, if elected, I would be pushing hard to make sure that they were able to reduce the rates burden or the rates increase burden. And the first one is ensuring that local government, the operational arm of local government or of council is operating efficiently. It's maximising outputs and minimising cost. And so ideally we want council to be run not like your typical government department, but like a mean, lean machine. And if there's fat in the system, then that needs to be addressed in my view. And so that's one potential component of making rates affordable. The second strategy that comes to mind for me is as I said, councils cannot be everything to everybody and cannot provide the service to the quality everybody is going to be wanting or expecting. So council needs to be strategic in terms of what it's going to fund. And so for me, it's really important that the core business is done well, and then over and above that, it shouldn't be more than one or two big initiatives at any one time. Any more than one or two big initiatives, I think it's going to have a significant burden on rates, and any more than one or two initiatives, there's a high chance that we won't get good quality. So I think being strategic around what council offers, setting a budget, and this is what we can offer within this budget, and making that clear to everybody is another way we can manage rate increases in my view. I guess the third strategy that comes to mind for me is any new initiative, and maybe councils do this, I don't know, but any new initiative, we need to make sure that it has a significant return on investment. So if we're investing in an initiative, and let's say it's worth $10 million, we need to do our homework and work out what is the return going to be to the community for that $10 million. And it's not always easy to measure, but is there an economic return to the people of Masterton? Is there a social good return to the people of Masterton? Is there a well-being return to the people of Masterton? And we need to somehow try and measure that and weigh it up against the investment. And if it doesn't, if a $10 million investment doesn't result in a 10 million plus return, then I think it cannot be a priority. So yeah, there's three possible strategies from someone who hasn't been on council before.
Sounds good to us, Tom. Look, let's talk about the Civic Centre, because that is at the moment we're up to $70 million, as a project, and the council do have a lot of projects coming through at the moment. We think sometimes too many projects that they're dealing with. But the Civic Centre was a hot topic over the last year at least. It's been going on for 6 years. So what's your current position, on where we're at, and what's a reasonable maximum spend for you?
Yeah, the Civic Centre has been an interesting case. For me, I think it's problematic on several counts, and again, not being on council, I haven't read the documents around the details of the Civic Centre. I've seen pictures of it, what it might look like. The new one. Mm-hmm. And I think it'd be fantastic for our community to have such a wonderful facility. Having said that, it's a $70 million spend. That's a significant cost, and it can only be funded through ratepayers either now or in the future. We're looking at building that or constructing that at a time where inflation hasn't been higher for about 40 years. So that potential 70 million is potentially going to be even higher. And interest rates at the moment are as high as they've been since I think about the 80s. So we're talking about the cost of servicing the debt to fund that initiative is likely to go up as well. So I think there's significant risks borrowing and building in this current climate, inflationary climate. Going back to my previous comment about a return on investment, I'd be very interested to see if there's been any studies done on the return on a $70 million investment, and what is going to be the impact on the town, perhaps economically, in terms of social good, in terms of well-being. For me, it's a bit like buying a brand new car. You enjoy it for the first 6 months, maybe 12 months, maybe 2 years, but after that it's just a car that gets you from A to B, and that initial aesthetic joy of having something new and shiny sort of disappears, and so then you're relying on how functional is the Civic Centre. And so I just think at this point in time for this current council, it's got a lot on the go. There are other ways to deliver the services that will be delivered from that Civic Centre, and I think there are cheaper alternatives. So if I'm elected, I really want to explore those cheaper alternatives, because I have some doubts that $70 million investment in the community is going to give us a $70 million plus return.
I guess that's why the council have put it into the review. It's currently under review at the moment, so once the new council comes on board, they'll be able to look at all those options.
Yeah, and I think it was a good decision by the council to realise there was resistance and to put it on hold.
What's your view on the library? Does the library stay where it is, or does it come into the Civic Centre?
Yeah, being an educationalist, there's a library standard across the country, and it's been made clear to me by a number of people that our library, given the size of our population and local incomes, etc., doesn't really meet the standard. But if we go back in time, the early public libraries were to help the average person to learn to read, because books were incredibly expensive to print. They were often chained to the library, so you actually couldn't take them out. So for me, with the library, before we invest big money in a new library, I think we need to investigate, what purpose is it serving in our town, and once we know that, then we can design the library. It does concern me when we invest in initiatives like that, because it doesn't meet some national standard. But if it's not meeting a significant need, then it's, as an elected member, you're responsible for making decisions on behalf of others and their money. We need to be careful how we do that. So I'm very keen in terms of the library, and I know I haven't answered your question, but what is the modern purpose of a library? Most of our young people are learning to read in schools. So, and a lot of information we need, we can get from our cell phone. So I'm very keen to explore what are the main purposes of the library, and is the current facility able to deliver that? If not, what might be the extras that are needed? And so that would then determine my thoughts on the next steps on the library.
Yeah, I think for us, from a ratepayer's perspective, we own the land that the current library is sitting on. Council have budgeted $5 million for the expansion there. Why wouldn't you just expand it where it is? Why would you move it, buy another piece of land for several $1 million somewhere else to incorporate the library into a civic centre?
I agree. I think that's smart economics. But let's find out what we need in a library first.
Okay, great. Look, let's talk about infrastructure. We've got large housing developments going on in Masterton. We've got climate change coming. It's causing more severe weather events, and ratepayers living with portaloos every time their streets flood. Some for as long as 8 years or 10 years now, especially in the Coburn, Columba Road areas. We fully expect significant water restrictions this summer, as we're starting to get every summer, and our infrastructure is going to struggle more in future years. So how do you plan on addressing this if you got onto council?
Yeah, so infrastructure and housing development, that was the first part of the question.
I mean, people blaming the housing development for the infrastructure here and the problems going on here, but it's a lot wider and more complex than just new housing developments.
Well, certainly from my perspective, housing development is a good thing for the town. Brings in jobs, brings in income, brings in population growth, brings in new skill sets, new people, brings in a vibrancy to the town, and so I think that's important. However, if we're managing housing development in a way that it's overburdening our infrastructure, or at the rate of change is so quick it's overburdening our infrastructure, council needs to manage that so it doesn't overburden the infrastructure. So to me, it's if elected, and that is an issue, we need to take that question to the operational wing of council and say, what are you doing about that? We can't have this amount of housing development when it's too much for this amount of infrastructure. I think to me it needs to be a planned, structured approach so that it doesn't overburden the infrastructure. In terms of climate change, for me, climate change is the biggest issue facing mankind at this point in time. I think councils and governments need to take a lead on addressing issues of climate change. Climate change comes with multiple issues, and I don't believe council has the capability or capacity to deal with them all. But the one thing that councils must address is, for me anyway, is security of water security. And I know the current council has tried to address that with new reservoirs in Lansdowne and Kaituna. But for me, if elected, I think we need to be far more brave and bolder in terms of managing the impacts of climate change. Now, we're seeing the impacts of climate change right around the world, and we're seeing just recently flooding in Northland and flooding in the Nelson region. What of that was a floodplain. So I think we need to be doing more, and perhaps working with other government agencies, Wellington Regional Councils, whatever, to ensure that we're protecting our community, not only for now but in the future. And so, one of the initiatives which I have a little bit of understanding about is the headwaters dam that was going to go up in the foothills of the Tararuas, which was going to secure a huge, vast quantity of water, but also allow us to control the river flows. Now, river damage, we're already seeing significant river damage here, but I think the floods can be even more extreme than that. So having the ability to pull large quantities of water, not only so people can survive, but for work, for farms, is a really smart idea. And having the ability to manage river flows will not only reduce the impact of direct flood damage, but it will reduce the impact of flooding on our infrastructure. So if elected, climate change will be a key issue for me, and in particular how we're addressing water, and I think flood damage along with drought is a couple of the biggest risks that we need to address. I don't think that's fixable in the short term and with small amounts of money, and so for me we need to be bold and brave and make sure we've got something in place to protect, to make sure we survive the future.
So what's your view on the Three Waters proposal coming from central government?
Yeah, again, if it's going to reduce the burden on ratepayers, why wouldn't we do it? But people tell me it might mean we're going to lose control over what is done and when it's done. But like everything, the decision making's in the details, and until you see the details, it's pretty hard to make a decision. But in terms of the economic thinking that goes on in my head, economies of scale are important for reducing costs. And if government wants to pick that up and run it on our behalf, and there's no additional cost, then I'd say let's go for it. But again, I'd need to investigate the details.
So you're for Three Waters proposal?
Only if it's going to reduce local government costs and the cost on ratepayers.
And would you take the first and second tranche of money that's coming council's way at the moment? And
Well, I think they're allowed to take that whether the Three
Whether they
Waters
take it
goes
or not.
ahead. So, councils can't create money like governments out of thin air. So, yes, I'll be taking it. But if it means we've got to agree to Three Waters, if it's tied to that, then that needs to be further investigated.
Okay, look, let's talk about amalgamation. With local government reforms probably coming on us. Where do you stand on the amalgamation of the three Wairarapa councils? Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, so I've watched this current government. They've amalgamated the polytechs, so we've got one combined polytech now, Te Pukenga. The legislation around Three Waters indicates they're keen to amalgamate there as well. So I believe this government has a bit of a bent towards amalgamation. I think if the three councils don't start working towards that or negotiating what that might look like, it could well be done to us by government and in a way that they determine the rules, not us. Or alternatively, we could well be swallowed up in a Wellington council and have even less autonomy over our own area. So coming back to the three council amalgamation, like all of these decisions, the quality of the decision is understanding the details, and I don't have all the details, but generally speaking, like all council decisions, there's points for and there's points against. Points against for me is that it would mean we would have less autonomy over how we spend our own rates. It would also likely mean in the short term that a large proportion of our rates are servicing issues in the other two areas, and so less of our rates addressing issues in Masterton. I think, however, that's probably a short-term issue to deal with. I think long-term, and I've talked already about economies of scale in other spaces, I think amalgamation is good because it will create economies of scale. We won't have to duplicate council services in three small regions. We'll have one set of services. There will be savings in staffing costs, the way I would see it, and because that one set of services is delivering their services to a bigger capacity, it means you can create economies of scale. So overall and in long term, I think it's probably in the best interest of the three councils to amalgamate. But again, we need to know what the rules will look like to see who's going to benefit and who's not, and hopefully everyone.
Hopefully. Look, Tom, we need to wrap it up there, but we thank you for your time today and wish you all the very best for your election campaign.
Yeah, thank you, Lyn, and thank you to you and your organisation again for giving us this opportunity to present to the public.
Great. That was Tom Hullena, who's standing in the general ward. So what did you think? We look forward to your feedback.